Rivalry week is here, one of the greatest weeks in all of college football, perhaps all of sports. And we still have some undecideds heading into conference championship weekend next weekend. It's going to be a fun Saturday of football. Lance, did you know that since 1990, teams with exactly 5 wins who face a team in the regular season in week 14 or later who has 4 wins or less, 78-25 straight up and 62-40 against the spread.
I say that again.
Okay.
Say that again.
5 wins, and they're facing a team in week 14 or later who has 4 wins or less. That 5-win team's trying to get that bowl eligibility.
Okay.
75-20 or 78-25 straight up, 62-40 against the spread. So those are the kind of nuggets we are bringing here today on Always Talking Ball. I'm Tyler Noe. He's Lance Barton. Let's get right into it, Lance. We did our live show last night talking about college football playoff rankings. We made our thoughts pretty well known. Did you have anything else you wanted to add on that front?
Yeah, actually I did. I texted you about this a little bit ago. I actually tweeted it out. That's a good little plug. At AlwaysTalkBall on X. Follow us. That's where we also put out all of our best bets on Saturdays. We've both been in the green constantly for the last 5 or 6 weeks. Been on a nice little roll. We'll have some best bets later in this episode as well. But yeah, at AlwaysTalkBall on X. I mentioned to you that I did not hear anybody mention it, period, really, anywhere. In any of the things that I listen to, watch, that a scenario, and I know we're all tired of hypotheticals, but let's keep giving them. If Texas A&M were to upset Texas this weekend, they're going to play for the SEC championship game against Georgia. If Texas A&M were to then upset Georgia in the SEC championship, what happens then? Because that's another team that's currently out of the field that jumps into the field. So if everybody else takes care of business and wins around them, somebody's got to be left out.
And who is the last team in currently?
Indiana. So all the people saying right now, including me up to this point, we were talking about it last night. Indiana's in this thing. They're in. I don't know, man. And I think it would come down to, if that scenario played out, and again, we're just hypotheticals, let's say everybody else takes care of business around that, you would be looking at, as of right now, it would come down to, for that final spot, Indiana, the ACC runner-up, whoever loses in the ACC championship game, and Texas.
Well, you got a 10-2 Texas and then a 10-3 Georgia. And
right.
I know we don't know how they're going to treat the loser of the championship games, but like I texted you, I mean, Georgia's going to be favored by double digits if they play A&M.
Mm-hmm.
And it's going to be a quasi-home game there in Atlanta like it always is. And they lose that game like that. I don't know if the committee would say, again, that's not a great loss. And again, with Texas, they got the name brand and everything, but what would their resume have on it to be like, you know what?
Yep.
A team with more losses actually would deserve to be in over this team with less losses.
Yeah, well, the problem with that would be, if you're narrowing it down to those 2 teams, bro, they got punked on their home field by Georgia, and they're in that same conference, did not qualify for the conference championship game, and Georgia did. I just think that there's no way that Georgia would be left out in that scenario.
Yeah.
So I do think it would still come down to Indiana, whoever loses the ACC championship, and Texas. And the funny thing is that normally you'd say, and that you would think with Texas being in the SEC, that you start looking at strength of schedule, all these great wins that they might have, all these ranked wins that so-and-so might have. Whoever that is, if it's the ACC runner-up, if it's Texas, if it's Indiana, none of them have good wins.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know what they would do. That was just a scenario that I thought of that could, again, who knows? If A&M gets beat this weekend, it's a moot point. But that's just interesting to think about.
Yeah. You want to touch on anything Ward Manuel said at all?
Yeah, let's do that. Good point. Thanks for bringing that up. Be careful here, more. I'm just going to speak from the heart. Guys, we all love this sport so much, okay? Like, we're all huge college football fans. And I guess it really depends on which side of the fence you sit on. If you're one of those that wants to just pound the table for the little guy and you love the underdog story, I like an underdog story too. Who doesn't? Because we're talking about competing for the championship of the sport of college football. You should have to earn, like, by having good wins to get in this thing. You should have to have good wins to get into this playoff. And we have been looking at these committees' rankings all year long, and they've been setting the precedent that doesn't matter who you play, doesn't matter how easy your schedule is, just win your games, and you get in. So they're setting the precedent that everybody should do their best to try to schedule as easy as possible. And we all, as college football fans, what do we all want to see? We want to see the best teams in this sport go up against each other. We want to see those gates get locked and the best of the best go at each other on the college football field. That's what we all want to see. When that first week of the season rolls around and that second week of the season roll around, we want to see the best teams from each conference, interlocking conferences, go against each other. And at this point, I don't know why anybody would do that. This committee in Ward Manuel literally said yesterday, like verbatim, I don't have the quote right in front of me, but he literally said that, we can't help who teams play in conference, not all conferences created, whatever. Like, we're just really looking at who's winning their games, basically saying exactly how their rankings are currently, configured. That it just doesn't matter in their eyes. Like, I think he literally said, if we're just going by strength of schedule, you wouldn't need us.
Mm-hmm.
That was one of the things he actually said. And you and I have talked about, it can't be just strength of schedule, but it's got to be some sort of a factor. It does. That can't be the end all be all. Common sense at some point probably, has to step in. And no matter what, somebody's going to get their feelings hurt and be left out of this thing, okay? This isn't about feelings. This isn't participation trophy bullshit. This is college freaking football, grown man football. And it's just right now they're setting the precedent to just go play whoever you want to play, schedule easy, win those games, have less losses than these teams, and you're in. And some of you might say, well, this is a typical SEC fan that's just out here crying because the SEC has a tougher conference and, there's not going to be as many teams in there. I'd be saying the same dang thing if this was, like, for example, a USC who had a really tough schedule in the Big Ten. If they were sitting here at 10-2 or a 9-3 team and had some solid quality wins, I'd be saying the same thing. So it's not just that at all. But they're setting a really awful precedent, in my opinion, you know what? I am happy that he actually spoke out and gave us some sort of context, finally. But we're going down a path now to where all the people that want the SEC to schedule non-conference games, heck no. They should never do that. Absolutely not. We've already got Big 12 coaches and Chris Kleiman that are already saying that this offseason, they're going to be hardcore pining to go away from non-conference games to playing 8 conference games and to scheduling much easier non-conference games. He was quoted saying that. And that's exactly what they should do. And I'll give you an example. I asked you this yesterday. If Clemson would have played Georgia Southern week 1 instead of Georgia, where would Clemson be ranked right now?
Yeah, probably around 8.
Yeah, 8 or 9. They'd be right there where SMU is. And that's not how this sport's supposed to be. That's not how this is supposed to work. It's just not.
And if Georgia had played Georgia Southern instead of Clemson, where would they be?
Mm-hmm.
Probably still 7th.
Yep, exact same spot they were in. It's like that game never happened. But it did for Clemson. It punished them majorly. And they rewarded other teams that beat up on Little Sisters of the Poor. And don't even get me started on the fact that, like, look, Boise State's a really good football team, okay? This is not hating on Boise, but saying that they should probably get a 4 seed in a first-round bye in the college football playoffs for playing in the Mountain West. That's ridiculous. That's a joke, is what it is. But look, the rest of you that think that you can pound that table and talk about, well, they deserve just as much as anybody. No, I'm sorry. They're not playing the same schedule, not even remote, borderline, not even the same sport in the Mountain West as some of these other conferences are. And if you hate that, I'm sorry.
We'll see that in the quarterfinal when they play Ohio State or Oregon.
Yeah, and hey, look, if you're
And I
listening,
know they already played Oregon. Sure, whatever. 3-point game. Good job. But come on.
yeah, look, and I'll be the first to say this: if you're listening to this and you hate everything that I'm saying right now, that's fine. Yeah, it's okay. I have my opinion, you have yours, and you are more than welcome to tweet at us or come on one of our live shows and call me out, whatever you want to do. If Boise ends up or whoever from the group of five ends up in this thing and gives Ohio State or whoever in a playoff game
Yeah.
like a battle or wins the game, like, and I'll be the first to tip of the hat and clap my hands for them.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that would be really cool, the David versus Goliath story. I'm just like every other American that would think that'd be really cool. But to give them a first round bye, it just, I don't know, man. Hearing his statements and seeing how they're seeding teams and stuff and what you can do to get in here, the fact that Clemson is the number one team being left out right now, the number one team that's like on the outside looking in and like just standing there waiting to possibly be in a large team when they've beaten one team with a winning record all year long. And they currently don't have a win against anybody that's ranked. They don't have a win against anybody that's like you're saying, let's look at teams like average power ranking, like win and things like that. They don't have any good wins there either. They lost 67-24 against the two best teams they played. They got boat raced on their home field by Louisville. They're possibly not even going to qualify for their own conference championship game. But hey, because they got two losses, they got less losses than these other teams that have played much tougher schedules and have more good wins than they do, but they got less losses. So let's put them in there. Yeah. And that should teach Clemson that should teach Clemson. Like, God, yeah, don't schedule Georgia. No. Go schedule the Citadel. Go schedule those teams week one.
It's unfortunate because we love to see those games, and I really wish. And again, the thing could change next year. The committee members change and all that, and they could value schedule or shrink the schedule next year. So we just have no idea. And we want to see those games played. We want to see Clemson, Georgia. We want to see Notre Dame, A&M. We want to see those week 1, week 2 games. And obviously, the ratings get pulled in, and they're only going to make more money in the future off those games because they're going to see 10 million people watch this game and all this stuff. So I don't think those games will necessarily stop being played. I think maybe you will see less conference games being played. But yeah, like we've said, as fans, we want to see 9 SEC games. Like, that's awesome. Like, we just want quality football to watch every week. You don't want to, there's been some weeks this week or this season where we've had, just not a lot of like really good games. And I know 2 bye weeks factors into that and all that, but we just want to see as much good football as possible. And the committee is making that really hard to happen. So I'm sure the rest of the episode we'll talk about some, throw in some playoff stuff here and there. But real quick, conference title scenario update. In the American, it's going to be Tulane versus Army. We just don't know where that game is going to be played yet. In the Mountain West, it's going to be taking place in Boise, Idaho, against UNLV or Colorado State. UNLV wins, they're in. They lose, and Colorado State wins, they're in. So Boise State's probably really hoping that's UNLV. So that's your G5 update right there. ACC, got SMU versus Miami or Clemson. Miami wins, they're in. They lose, Clemson's in. Big Ten, you got Oregon settled in there in Indianapolis. Versus Ohio State, Penn State, or Indiana. If Ohio State wins, they're in. If Ohio State loses and Penn State and Indiana win, Penn State's in. If Ohio State and Penn State both lose and Indiana beats Purdue, Indiana's in. So more than likely, you're going to get a second matchup between Oregon and Ohio State. SEC, you got Georgia versus A&M or Texas. Winner of that game. Pretty easy. And then the Big 12, all I'm going to say is if the top 4 teams win, you get Arizona State and Iowa State. That's going to be the most clean scenario you have. I know we've got
the top 4 Arizona State, Iowa State, Colorado, and BYU. Okay.
And they're all favored in their matchups. Okay. That doesn't mean jack squat in the Big 12. So
who gets?
But if they all,
I don't mean to put you on the spot. If you don't know this answer, it's okay. If Arizona State wins and Iowa State loses Farmageddon, who gets in if Colorado and BYU both win?
It would be BYU.
Okay.
Yeah. So
I was just curious if there was a scenario where old Prime and Shadura and that crew could get to Dallas if something like that would happen.
BYU loses to Houston, and Iowa State loses Farmageddon. Colorado takes care of business Friday against Oklahoma State. we could get ourselves a good old-fashioned Big 12 championship between Colorado and Arizona State.
Okay.
And still would have hope for maybe seeing Colorado up against one of these, Big 10 or SEC teams.
Yeah.
So we'll see. I know we still got rivalry week left, but that's just a conference title scenario update with 1 week to go. Let's get into our ATB marquee matchups brought to you by Home Field Apparel. ATB 15 for 15% off. Right now, they got a 30% off Black Friday deal. Go to the link on our Twitter page. We put out a bunch of TikToks, Instagrams, all that stuff with the link on there. Go to that and you get 30% off for Black Friday. Heck of a sale going on over there. Go get some Christmas gifts. Stock up early. We got 2 marquee matchups in our eyes. I know there's 3 ranked versus ranked matchups, but the first one, obviously, it's been a while since Texas and Texas A&M have been on the field together. First time since 2011. And since this series started in 1894, this is the longest these two schools have had between matchups. So conference realignment really, really hurt us there, but conference realignment brought us back. So Texas is currently 5-point favorites on the road in College Station in what, in my opinion, is going to be one of the hardest games to win for a road team all year. You can talk about all kinds of different environments and all that, but with everything building up in this game, and obviously not playing for 13 years, and the last time they played, Texas won on a last-second field goal. And, I mean, you've had A&M spend the last 13 years in the SEC saying they're better than Texas in the Big 12, and then you've got Texas is pretty much saying they're better than everybody all the time. And, I mean, it's just hate back and forth, back and forth. This one's going to be a good one to watch.
Isn't this incredible that when we previewed the SEC earlier in the year, back during the summer, and we talked about, we had other episodes too, just there's so many times that when the schedule got released for the SEC for this year, the most talked about matchup, period, of the entire SEC was Texas going to Texas A&M because of all of the just absolute hate that you're going to see. This is what makes college football the best sport on the planet. It is when two teams that just have an utter disdain for one another. Fans hate each other. Teams hate each other. There's not one thing that these two teams like about one another. And the mentality that Texas A&M has about feeling slighted because Texas acts like that they're just so much better than them type deal, like all of that is just, it's remarkable. It's awesome. It's what makes college football so great. And what we said back during the summer is that if I could have one wish for this entire college football season, and I'm an Alabama fan saying this, I wanted the Texas versus Texas A&M game to have some serious meaning to it. Mm-hmm. Whether it would be to keep another team out of the playoff or to get to an S, whatever, other than just the fact that these two teams hate each other. And here we are, and the winner of this game goes to Atlanta to play for the SEC championship. It's that simple. There is no other hypotheticals, nothing. It's whoever comes out on top goes to Atlanta to play for an SEC title. It's Texas A&M.
A&M's never been to an SEC championship game, right?
They have not.
And obviously Texas in their first year, they really would love to make a statement and get to Atlanta.
Correct. So Texas A&M has the opportunity to go for the first time ever to Atlanta for an SEC championship, and they are the ones that can end Texas's hopes. And let's be real. They're the ones that can represent the rest of the SEC who does not want Texas to win the SEC championship in their first year in the SEC. Yep. That's what's at stake in this game. It's literally everything is at stake. So, and then a night game at Kyle Field. We saw what that place was like when LSU came to town a few weeks ago. Just incredible. You were down there. First game of the year to start the year. You were down there for the Notre Dame A&M game and talked about how awesome that atmosphere was. I think we can multiply those two things together and it won't equal what's going to be Saturday night. So to your point, man, I agree 1,000%. Texas will earn, they already are one of the best teams in the country, but the amount of respect that I'll personally give to them if they can go into that environment and take care of business in this spot, big time. And as far as the play on the field, I think what it comes down to is, can Texas A&M get pressure on Quinn Ewers? We saw Georgia do it, and it just wrecked Texas's offense. I don't think that Texas will be able to. Auburn had a lot of success last week with Jarquez Hunter running the football against them. But I don't know that Texas can line up and just pound the football at A&M. I don't think they can. That's just my thoughts on that. So this is can I just say this is a Quinn Ewers legacy game type deal? That's what this game is.
You think Sark's going to stick to his 40-play script?
He pretty much does all the time for the most part. He might, man. He might. But do you agree with me? Like, if Texas goes out, you know how like big this game is to these fans. If Texas were to go out and lose and Quinn Ewers doesn't play well, I mean, there's already a lot of people that kind of would rather see Arch Manning play anyway. Like, it's kind of like they like Quinn Ewers a lot, but I don't know how much Texas just necessarily is just so in love with Quinn Ewers.
Right.
And then you got people like, Greg McElroy and other people talking about how this Texas team with all this talent that they kind of leave you with always wanting more. And you have all these just really talented pieces and one of the best play callers in the sport. But Quinn Ewers, like, one game will look really good in some moments, and in some moments in the game he doesn't. I mean, really the best game I feel like he's played at the biggest moments was in the Big 12 championship game last year at Alabama. Yeah. If he goes into College Station and just lights it up and plays really well, I think that this is a legacy game for him that Texas fans, he'll be endeared to Texas fans forever.
That's the thing. I feel like they have played, maybe he has played a lot better on the road, it seems like, than at home. I mean, obviously Alabama, again, away from home in the Big 12 championship game. They went to Michigan earlier this year.
Yep.
Again, when they played Georgia at home, obviously it didn't look great.
No. And he played pretty well at Arkansas. But to that point, I'm glad you brought up the road deal. At Arkansas at 11 a.m. local and at Vandy. That's the two road games that Texas has played. This ain't Arkansas at 11 a.m. and this ain't Vandy.
No.
So this will be the first time. Dude, this is by far, think about this. Like, I heard somebody mention this the other day. As far as big conference play, like Texas, like the biggest stadium that Texas would ever play in on the road was like 60,000 seats.
Yeah.
And this is 100 and what, like 8, 10, whatever, 1,000 seats. It's going to be in Kyle Field. And whatever it is, it's over 100,000.
Yeah.
That's at Kyle Field. So as far as the matchup, again, can Texas A&M get pressure?
Yeah.
On Quinn Ewers. Because A&M has been pretty bad at defending the explosive pass play. The secondary can be had in a downfield passing game. But like we've seen, like Texas can do that. But they've been more, it seems like, with Sark and this bunch, like you and I talked about it during that Arkansas game. Man, they didn't push the ball down the field hardly at all.
Yeah.
They just kept throwing your shorter passes and more short and intermediate game. And I think to beat this A&M bunch, you've got to push the ball down the field. So can you give him time against that nasty Texas A&M D front? And if you can, I think Texas wins the game. On the flip side of that, I mean, A&M got down 21-0 quick to Auburn, and it seemed like that was about to be a blowout. And then Marcel Reed and that offense got cooking and played much better ball. Texas's defense.
Same thing against LSU at home.
Yeah. And Texas's defense, I've been very impressed with this year. They're honestly, they were a lot. I thought the defense, we all thought the defense was, everybody did, that the defense was going to be good going into the year. But we talked about in preseason wise that losing those monster defensive tackles like they did, Kavondre Sweat and Byron Murphy, that we thought they'd take a little bit of a step back. Honestly, I just think they're a different style of defense, which has been a good thing for them. They got a lot more speed. They rush the passer really well. They got multiple pass rushers that can get after you. They got one of the best middle linebackers in the country. And so I think that Texas's defense could give A&M a lot of problems too. But unless I'm mistaken, I mean, Texas hasn't really faced a like big-time dual threat quarterback yet this year, have they?
Taylor Green?
Yeah, but like they don't really run him in the actual QB design run game much.
Yeah.
Like his is more like when the play breaks down, he takes off running. Marcel Reed, obviously they run the read option with him a lot, and they run him in the design QB run game. So like I don't know that they've played really anybody that like that they use the QB in the design run game like A&M's going to do.
Yeah.
So I mean, I think this is going to be. I think it's going to live up to the hype. I think it's going to be one of the best, probably the best football game of the weekend. And what do you think? What's your thoughts?
Well, I already took Texas A&M plus 7.5 early in the week, and I'm seriously contemplating taking them money line.
Little sprinkle?
Yes, might sprinkle the money line. I know I'll probably get a boost on one of these sports books here in Indiana. They'll offer a little profit boost on it, but yeah, it's. I know there's ways Texas can win this game, but it's really hard for me to see them going in there and pulling it out. And if they do, props to them and everything we've said about them and their schedule and all that stuff. Like, we've just kind of been giving them the benefit of the doubt on the eye test all season long. And everything we've said, well, okay, you went out and you proved it. It's not the fact that it's like number 3 versus number 20, right? I mean, this is Texas A&M. Like,
yeah.
And this is going to be just so heated. And it's going to be very, very tough for Texas to win this game. They have the talent to do it. They've got the quarterback to do it. They've got the running back to do it. But man, just overcoming A&M. Heck, I think Elko. I mean, if this was last year and realignment took place last year and Jimbo was the coach last year, like, yeah, I'd be taking Texas all day.
All
but
day.
Mike Elko is head and shoulders a better coach than Jimbo Fisher.
Yep.
And it's his first year. He's got them in a spot where they can make the conference championship game. And we saw what he did at Duke and everything. Like, he's well on his way to kind of being in the upper echelon of coaches for years to come. And
I
Texas
agree.
A&M made a great heire with that.
Yeah, he's
I
think he's a ball.
I think Aggies.
You got you're taking the Aggies to win? Is that what you said?
I don't know if I'm going to bet it yet, but if you put a gun to my head, I would say Aggies win this game.
Okay. All right. I'm with you. I've got Texas A&M plus 5.5 as a best bet in this game. I just think that, again, like what you just said, I think Mike Elko is the difference for Texas A&M here. He's not Jimbo Fisher. I love this Texas A&M defensive front, able to get after Ewers. They've only faced one defensive front all year long that's anywhere near as good as this. I know Michigan's got a good D front, but I don't think they're as good at getting after the passer as a Georgia is or as A&M is.
Michigan doesn't have the team speed.
No. Michigan's more of a mauling, stop-the-run defensive front.
Yeah.
And, yeah, A&M is more – they can do both. But I think A&M gets after the passer much better with Nick Scorton and Shamar Turner, Shamar Stewart, all that bunch there. So I think they're going to be able to get after Ewers in this game and do enough on offense with Marcel Reed. I wish that Le'Veon Moss was still playing in this game. If he was, I'd be much more confident in taking this. But still, Amari Daniels is a really good running back for A&M. The freshman Terry Bussey, he got a couple of carries against Auburn as well, the 5-star superstar freshman. I think you'll see him a little bit in the run game as well. And I just think that atmosphere, Mike Elko, and that defense for A&M gets it done. So I'll take A&M plus 5.5 as a best bet. And I might join you as well with maybe put 75% of it on A&M at plus 5.5, and then take another 25% and sprinkle it on the money line.
Last week of the regular season, man, just go all out.
Might as well.
Go all out. Let's talk a little Palmetto Bowl, top 12 rivalry in college football. Before I let Lance go in on Clemson here, if Clemson closes as a favorite, first of all, can someone just tell us how to pronounce Clemson? Like
you said it.
Clemson.
It's Clemson.
Clemson. Is it Clemson? Is it? I don't know. I need Moose's help on this. Like Clemson.
Clemson.
Yeah, whatever.
Clemson.
If they close as a favorite against South Carolina, it'll be favored for over the Gamecocks in 10 straight meetings dating back to 2014. So 2013 was the last time South Carolina was favored over the Tigers. During that 9-game stretch, Clemson 8-1 straight up and 6-3 against the spread. And they both have faced each other, both ranked in the top 25, 7 times all time Gamecocks, perfect 7-0, 7-0 straight up and against the spread in those games when both teams are ranked.
Ooh.
What say you about the Clemson Tigers?
I mean, this is by far the best team they've faced since Georgia, since the beginning of the year. And as far as the Clemson's problems the last few years has come down to their offensive line has not been very good. They had some issues at wide receiver too, or whatever. Clemson's defense has been really good for as long as I can remember. But I'm interested to see if Matt Luke, who they brought in as offensive line coach, how much of a difference does he make in this game? Because look, South Carolina's defensive front is one of the probably 5 or 6 defensive lines in all of college football. They're nasty and got 2 really good pass rushers. They're very aggressive. They play downhill, and they get after you in the backfield. A lot of tackles for a loss, a lot of sacks. So what does I think Cade Klubnik, who can move, he obviously can move. We saw him get loose against Pitt in that that long run at the end of the game. But I mean, I think Clemson really wants to try to run the football with Maffa and with Klubnik, and I don't know that they're going to be able to. They're going to have to against this Clemson defensive front, because if they get to the point where they're just dropping back and passing, and you turn those pass rushers loose for South Carolina, you're in trouble. But having a mobile quarterback like Klubnik, I think, can help them a lot. But something that is intriguing to me with Clemson, they've been significantly better overall across the whole year offensively this year. But when I pull up like the best defenses that they've played this year, they scored 3 points against Georgia. They scored 21 points at home against Louisville, but Louisville's defense is trash. That's not one of the better defenses they played. Virginia Tech, Virginia Tech's solid defensively. Clemson only scored 24 points against Virginia Tech, and they scored 24 points against Pitt. I mean, I think for Clemson to win this game, they're going to need to force some turnovers and set their offense up for short fields because I just don't know that Clemson's offense can sustain drives up and down the field and go the length of the field and sustain drives consistently for 4 quarters against this South Carolina defense. Do you?
No.
I don't either. So, I mean, South Carolina has been playing better ball here lately, but I just think they're going to have to turn South Carolina over. And Lenora Sellers and Rocket Sanders have been an incredible duo in the backfield for South Carolina. But, hey, I have a lot of respect for this Clemson defensive front and this Clemson defensive line. And Clemson's defense for years has been really good as well in getting after you with a rivalry game like this. I do think that they can make Sellers try to have to beat them with his arm. And if they can do that, then I think they have a great shot at winning this game. But I think South Carolina finds a way to win. I do think it's a really good game. And I think that the Coots find a way to beat Clemson in a close game. And if you're listening to this and you're like, what did he just say? I agree. I don't know either. Apparently, I put out a video about Clemson, how they shouldn't have been in the playoffs or whatever. And again, I backed Clemson all year until this game.
You have yet to sell your stock at Dabo.
I've yet to sell my stock on Clemson. Again, Dabo last year after one of their wins, I think it was a win against Notre Dame. He told everybody if Clemson was a stock, you better buy all you can freaking get. And I said, say less. And I bought that stock. I bought Clemson's win total over. I picked Clemson to win the ACC championship this year. I've bet on them a couple of games this year as well. And heck, I ended up betting on them against one of my boys, against Virginia Tech, at Virginia Tech. And they covered in that game.
Mm-hmm.
And, man, I put out a video just saying I didn't think that Clemson should be an at-large team in the playoffs, and the Clemson fans came for my throat on social media. And I kept getting called this thing called a coot, C-O-O-T. And finally, I was like, what the hell is a coot? So I went to Google, and just, Google's our friend, and started finding. I found on some Clemson message boards what a coot was. And so, hey, South Carolina fans, I'm a coot with you this weekend. And I'm taking the Gamecocks to win and cover. Not a best bet, but we're not afraid here to pick games. So I'll take South Carolina to win and obviously cover.
Yeah, the way our year's gone, you just know after that video and getting all those views and comments and everything, Clemson will probably win by 2 touchdowns. Miami will lose. Clemson will go to the ACC championship game. They'll win.
And that's
Probably
okay.
make a run. Probably make a run of the national championship. So good for the Tigers.
Hey, that's okay. I said the only way that Clemson should be in the playoffs is if they win the ACC championship. So if that happens and they win the ACC, I'll be the first pound of the desk for them.
Yeah, and I mean, to their credit, they are still standing on their principles, and they're saying if they win, they're in. Which
I don't know how that's possible, but sure.
Yeah, so I don't know.
Yeah. They're not.
Okay.
By the way, that's not true. They need people to lose ahead of them.
Yeah, that's what I would think. But they seem to think they're going to make it over the ACC loser. So, hey, we'll find out. Let's get to a couple games quickly. I know it's Thanksgiving break and we all got stuff to do, but we got to talk about some more rivalries here on Rivalry Week, and we got to talk about the Iron Bowl, right? Or as they call it down in the South, the Iron Bowl.
Iron Bowl.
Auburn at Bama. Bama's 11.5-point favorites. It's not been a great couple days here for Alabama and Kalen DeBoer. Alabama as 14-point favorites. Under Kalen DeBoer, 2 losses in 8 games. And under Nick Saban, 3 losses in 139 games. So that right there will get the fans all riled up against you. When a top 10 team scores 3 points or less in their previous game, they're just 18-22 straight up and 14-25 against the spread in their next game over the last 30 years. But the big favorite in the Iron Bowl has usually won this series going back historically. As a favorite of over 10 points, the favorite is 21-1 straight up in this series over the last 50 years. So whether it's Bama or Auburn, you're favored by double digits, you got a really good shot to win this game. Needless to say, this is an extremely, extremely important game for Kalen DeBoer in his 12th game coaching the Crimson Tide.
It's the biggest game he's ever coached in. It's not the national championship game last year.
Yep.
It's bigger than the Pac-12 championship that he played in last year. It is. Yeah. I've said it about earlier this week, and I'll say it again. If you think the negativity and all of the just negative everything that's surrounding Alabama this past week and just at different times throughout this year, like you've said, like the Bama fan base has been pretty bipolar this year, and rightfully so.
Team's been bipolar.
It has, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Everything about Alabama this year has been bipolar. They lose at home to a 5-win Auburn team, when this Auburn team currently has a ton of momentum in recruiting, which, depending on what side of the fence you're on, if you think recruiting is important or not, Alabama fans and SEC fans believe it's the lifeblood of your program, especially Alabama fans. And Auburn right now is right there with Alabama in recruiting, if not even better at the moment. So you let Alabama lose this game, and you see the negativity that comes out after that towards Kalen DeBoer. The stuff going into the offseason will be so bad, and the optics of it will be awful. So you're right. This is a huge, outside of it just being the Iron Bowl, it's huge for him. So as far as the game goes and the play on the field, I mean, we just saw Jarquez Hunter and what he did in the run game against Texas A&M. I personally think he is the best running back in the SEC. If people want to argue that, yeah.
Dylan Sampson has something to argue with that.
That's fine. I think if Jarquez Hunter played in that same offense with Tennessee, he'd be doing the same thing, if not better. And Auburn, out of nowhere in the last few weeks, has really also, they've gotten the passing game going because they've got dudes at receiver, and Lambert Smith and Cam Coleman, the 5-star superstar freshman. They showed up in that A&M game too, in the downfield passing game. The previous game before that against their Podunk team that they played, they did the same thing in that game as well. As I like to say, I think they might have found themselves a little bit in that Podunk game before they played Texas A&M. And what do we always say against some of these defenses? What gives them trouble is when you have a dual threat quarterback. We saw Jackson Arnold last week rush for over 100 yards against Alabama. So Peyton Thorne's he can move. He's a solid, again, he's not going to run around like Michael Vick or Milroe by any means, speed-wise, but he's good enough with his legs that he can hurt you. So what adjustments has Kane Womack in Alabama made since last week when they let a former walk-on freshman tailback run for over 100 yards and Jackson Arnold run for over 100 yards to be able to stop this Auburn rush attack? And Auburn runs they run the read option type game. That's what they do. Every play is basically that. And so can the defensive backs keep the eye discipline and keep the eye candy can they stay on those receivers? Auburn's going to throw the ball down the field to those big physical receivers. Going to be a lot of 50-50 balls, jump balls thrown down the field. Can Alabama win some of those matchups? On the flip side of that, I'm interested to see what Auburn can do against a legit dual threat quarterback. I know they did okay against Marcel Reed, but still, Texas A&M scored plenty and ended up going off. Mm-hmm. Does it help Auburn that they played a quarterback like that the previous week before playing Alabama? Maybe. I don't know. We thought that might help LSU playing A&M and then having 2 weeks to prepare, and then Milroe ran for 180-something yards against them. So I think 11.5 is too many. I do. I think this is going – I don't know if – I'm sure you probably haven't, but for anybody listening that's not an Alabama or Auburn fan, the amount of smack Auburn has – it's almost like Hugh Freeze probably told his team, I want you to know it, believe it, think it, act like it, that you think that you're better than this team. And if you can go win this game, walk it and talk it. And they're acting like it. DeMarcus Riddick, a 5-star freshman linebacker for Auburn, called out Jalen Milroe, called out Ryan Williams, Cam Coleman, saying the same stuff, talking about how they're going to go in and take over your whatever, take over your house, come in your house, take it over, whatever type stuff. A lot of that being said. And, hey, maybe they do. Alabama's got to do something about it. How does Alabama react when they're not, I guess they're not 100% eliminated from the playoff, but they're not really in the playoff mix anymore.
Yeah.
How do they react to that? It should be that this is the freaking Iron Bowl. And it's all about just beating Auburn. Who gives a rat's ass about anything else is what it should be about.
Yeah, you got to have some pride. You got to have some pride in playing in Bryant-Denny Stadium. I mean, it's very fortunate for them this game's at home. We've seen them on the road this year not play well. I think I read a stat that only I don't know if I can't remember what it was. It was a couple coaches or whatever have, or maybe only 3 Alabama coaches have won their first ever Iron Bowl they played in. Like Nick Saban lost his first one, so it's a tough game to win. But you got it at home. But I mean, yeah, I agree with you. I think the Tide are in trouble Saturday. I mean, I just keep looking back at that last game, of the season last year, where they needed a 4th and 31 to win the game. After Auburn had 3 turnovers in the game to 0 for Alabama, and Auburn completed 6 passes in that game.
Yeah.
In a college football game, they completed 6 passes.
Yeah.
And they were still in it because they ran for 250 yards. So, Hugh Freeze has always had, for some, I guess maybe it could have been Freeze versus Saban, and we'll see what he does against DeBoer. But Hugh Freeze has always had, he's really always given Alabama his best shot.
Yeah, he has. I mean, like dating back to Ole Miss, he always has. I mean, for Alabama too, no Deontay Lawson, which is their green dot linebacker, the quarterback of the defense, team captain. Obviously Jahad Campbell, who's listed as the top middle linebacker in all the NFL draft boards. He's going to have to really step up. They've got a couple solid young guys they can bring in. But again, that's not your team captain, Deontay Lawson. It's not.
Right.
So I think it's a really close game, and I'm going to pick Alabama to win. Shocker. But I think it is within one possession. And I don't think it'll be pretty. I think it's going to be an absolute slugfest, nasty type game. A beautiful, just good old-fashioned hate rivalry game. And I think Alabama wins this game in really close fashion. But it won't shock me if Auburn goes in there and somehow wins this game. It won't.
Okay. 3:30 on ABC. We're looking forward to it. 3:30 on CBS. And it's about to be the first time in a long time the battle for the jeweled shillelagh has been on CBS. Notre Dame and USC, 7.5-point favorites for Notre Dame. As a favorite of 7 points or more versus USC, Notre Dame 7-2 straight up, just 2-7 against the spread over the last 40 years. Fighting Irish have not covered the spread on the road at USC since 2012, losing 4 in a row, going 1-3 straight up in those games. And when Notre Dame has 1 loss or fewer entering the matchup versus USC, from 94 to 2009, they were 0-5 straight up, but since 2010, when they're in a position like this, they're 6-0 straight up. I would expect the best effort out of Notre Dame. USC is, like we said, they're a talented team. They are, 6-5, right?
Yeah.
Is that right? 7-4, 6-5?
6-5.
They're still a top 20 power rated team. So, they're still up there in those, which is why you see the spread of 7.5 and not 16.5 like some people thought it might be. And I just think you get the best. I mean, really, over the course of his career, Marcus Freeman's teams have had no issue showing up in these big games. It's those games against Marshall and Northern Illinois and lowly Stanford that you have to worry about. So the question will be, how effective can the offense be against a USC defense that is playing a lot better over the past month? And D'Anton Lynn will probably devise a pretty good plan for Riley Leonard. So we'll see what they can do, and we'll see against Jade Mayaba, the new USC quarterback, how effective Notre Dame's defense can be. Obviously in the secondary with Xavier Watts back there, but hopefully, we'll see if Howard Cross is back for this game. I would think, taking the Army game off to a little more rest, he'd probably be back. Him and Riley Mills, stuff in the middle, trying to stop Woody Marks is pretty good. So, outsider's perspective, I want to hear what your thoughts are on this game.
I mean, I just want to know, can USC hold up to the physicality of Notre Dame? And I think my favorite quote of this college football season, and I'm not trying to be prisoner of the moment, maybe in many seasons. I'm sitting there, I told Tyler this, and he cracked up. He loved it. We all know about if you're a big Rocky fan, when Clubber Lang, when they asked him, what's your prediction on tonight's fight? And he goes, pain. When that Notre Dame game was getting ready to kick off, and they're sitting there interviewing Marcus Freeman, and he just looks with a kind of like a real confident, just like intense look on his face, and they asked him, and he said, so, what's the keys to the game on defense? And he just goes, violence. And then she looked at him and was like, what? And he goes, we must be violent. We have to be the more violent team in this game.
You don't hear coaches, saying that in public. I'm sure they say it in the locker room a lot, but you don't hear a lot of coaches these days talking about violence because kind of a taboo word.
Exactly. And they said, what about the offense? Violent. We want to be violent in every aspect of this game. And that's what I think when I watch Notre Dame play, honestly, that's what I think of them. Like, they are violent on the line of scrimmage. They pop you on defense. They get you to the ground. Like, they're not missing a bunch of tackles. They're fundamentally sound. When you think of Notre Dame right now, I guess really the knock is maybe they don't have the super freak athletes on the perimeter or whatever like that, but they get after you. Now, USC does have some speed on the perimeter, got a dual threat quarterback. So obviously I think Lincoln Riley wants to turn this into a perimeter game. And how will Notre Dame handle that? Because Notre Dame hasn't played many teams that can turn it into more of a perimeter game. Louisville could a little bit, and they played well at Notre Dame. They gave them a little bit of a game. So another little nugget on this is too, Tyler. I looked at USC's schedule when I was looking at this game. They've only lost one home game all year, and it was a 3-point overtime loss to the number 4 ranked team in the country right now.
Yeah.
Penn State. Yep. Their losses have come on the road. Their failures have come away from the Coliseum. So I do think that this has a chance to be extremely interesting. But I just can't see I cannot see USC, man, being able to hold up against the violence that I think Notre Dame is going to bring in this game. And I think Notre Dame finds a way to win. Honestly, like, I don't know that any result it would shock me a little bit if USC won the game, but it's not going to shock me if this is an absolute just all-out battle and Notre Dame wins close. It's not going to shock me if Notre Dame wins by 14 plus. I will be impressed, though. I don't care what USC's record is. I just said that USC's, again, their only home loss is a 3-point loss to the number 4 ranked team in the country. If Notre Dame does go in there and just punk them in the Coliseum, that will very much impress me. I'll take Notre Dame to win this game. I have no idea as far as the spread is concerned. I'm staying away from that. But I think the Irish I think they get it done.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. Very rarely does this game kick off at 3:30 Eastern, so it's 12:30 local time out there. Yeah. It's usually a night game, so it'll be interesting.
Did you say Howard Cross is back?
I don't know yet. No,
okay.
Haven't heard. So we'll see. He sat out the past 2 games with a lower body injury. So, but yeah, it's a win and in situation for Notre Dame. All you got to do is win by 1, by 20, doesn't matter. So. Real quick game on Fox, small game. Nobody really cares about it this year, right? except for the people in 2 states. Excuse me. Michigan at Ohio State, 21-point favorites for the Buckeyes. It's not really a surprise given what we've seen from both teams this year. But since 1970, biggest favorites for Ohio State over Michigan. They were favored by 21 in 2014. They won that game by 14. They were favored by 20.5 in 2008. They won that game by 35. They were favored by 17 in 2013. They won that game 42-41. And they were favored by 17 in 96. They lost outright 13-9. They were favored by 16.5 in 2010. 137-7. So you really don't get a lot of big spreads in this matchup. Since 2013, though, little nugget for the total here. The over is a perfect 10-0 in Michigan-Ohio State games since 2013. Going over by a total of 16.5 points per game.
Ooh.
And Lance is looking down right now.
Is it time
you
to
can
fade
see him.
that?
He's looking down right now to see what the total is.
Yeah, is it time to fade that?
So I don't know if you do the total this year with this, given how awful that Michigan offense has looked. Now, they got things rolling last week against Northwestern, put up 50-burger, but I don't know, man. What percentage-wise, just real quick, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this game, but real quick, percentage-wise, what percent chance do you give Michigan to just go in there and they pull out the outright upset and they beat the Buckeyes for the 4th time in a row?
5.
Okay.
I just don't know I don't know how Michigan's going to score, man.
Mm-hmm.
They'll have to be non-offensive. They'll have to set their offense up with turnovers. I will say I do think that they can drastically slow down the Ohio State running game. I do think they can do that. Yeah. Will Howard is going to have to do things with. Again, he's been very good with his arm all year. Extremely efficient, accurate. Ohio State's got an embarrassment of riches at receiver. Very similar to what I said about last week against Indiana. Their offensive game plan. I think that they need to throw the football and turn those wide receivers loose on the perimeter. Hearing that a couple of those Michigan DBs are still going to be out and not playing. So obviously, Will Johnson, the All-American corner going into the year, going to be one of the top corners in the NFL draft. It says, I don't know for sure, but it doesn't sound like he's not playing. Yeah. If that's the case, then again, turn Smith and Egbuka and Carnell Tate and Ennis and all those guys loose on the perimeter and let Will Howard cook. And as long as he doesn't turn the football over, I just don't know how Michigan's going to score. So I'll give them a 5% chance with the fact of in a game like this, you just empty the kitchen sink, all out effort. Maybe you get a sack, fumble, a couple non-offensive touchdowns. The defense holds up against Ohio State. Dude, I do think that Michigan, it's possible they could keep it within this number, though.
Okay.
I'm going to say Ohio State wins. I don't know I don't know who covers or not. I'm going to say the Buckeyes win. But I do think that Michigan can stop the run, and they will force Will Howard to have to beat them. Again, I do think Will Howard is good enough to do that. He's been good all year. Yeah.
Yep, the future is obviously bright for Michigan, so I'm not sure Saturday consists of the future, though. So,
agreed.
Farmageddon, Kansas State at Iowa State, 2.5-point line right now in favor of the Cyclones. It's the only other ranked matchup other than the two marquee matchups we talked about. Iowa State, you win, and you're in the Big 12 championship game. You still got a chance to go to the college football playoff.
Yep.
I think if there's one team that comes to mind as a Big 12 team who could maybe succeed as an underdog in the college football playoff, it's Matt Campbell and the Iowa State Cyclones. I mean, he's always thrived in that underdog role. So this game is going to be interesting to watch. I mean, you remember last year, just absolute snowmageddon.
Yep.
In Manhattan. Next year, it's taking place in week 0 in Ireland. So don't like the fact they're taking this off of Kansas State.
Hate that.
Yeah, it's not what we want to see, but should be a good one. Really not going to talk much about that game. Tennessee at Vandy. Vanderbilt plus 11 at home as underdogs of 7 points or more. Vanderbilt 7-0 against the spread this season with Diego Pavia. And as an underdog as a whole, his whole college career, he's 16-7 against the spread as a dog. Last year, New Mexico State went into Auburn, beat them outright by 21. This is a game that we'll touch on here in a couple minutes, but I just think this is a danger spot for Tennessee because you've pointed out to me multiple times on the road, they are a different team.
Yeah, they are. They've, I wish I had those numbers in front of me, but it was on the road. Like Tennessee is like, it's remarkable the difference in the home road dichotomy between these two teams, between Tennessee. They basically just beat everybody that comes to Knoxville. I think Georgia's really the only team that's beaten them in the last few years in Knoxville. And then when they go on the road, they lose. I mean, they lost in the Swamp last year. They lost at Missouri last year. They've lost at Georgia this year. They lost at Arkansas this year.
Yeah, since last season, I got the text you sent me.
Okay.
Since last season, the Vols are 2-5 on the road straight up. Only wins are a 6-point win at Kentucky and then the 10-point win at Oklahoma earlier this year. They lost by double digits in 4 of those 5 losses. Only one they didn't lose double digits by was when they lost to Arkansas earlier this year by 5 points.
Yeah. So
they're averaging 15 points per game on offense in those 5 losses.
Yep. So for whatever reason, they're not even. I mean, most teams are better at home,
Sure.
But like to that extent, though, that's I don't know what the deal is there. But
they might be the weakest looking eye test team in the playoff currently right now, right? I mean, their defense is solid, but like they just have not found it on offense this year yet. Like eye test when you're watching them.
Yeah.
And we could bring on our boy Freddie. He said it, since the 6th game of the year when they were getting shut out at first half after first half, playing, against Kentucky, playing against Florida, having close games. You just watching them play, you're probably like, man, out of all the teams, even SMU and Indiana, like those teams have looked much better than the product that Tennessee has put out there a lot.
It depends on what you favor, though. Most people today in today's college football and today's football in general, you favor offense more than defense. Right. Like I can make an argument that I think that Miami, for how piss poor they've been defensively in the majority of their games, that they're worse on the eye test. But it would be between Tennessee and Miami as far as week in and week out that is leave you desiring more when you watch them play. Tennessee on the offensive side, not the defensive side, and Miami on the defensive side, not the offensive side. So, man, I don't know how you could really go against as far as I think Tennessee finds a way to win, but I could see Vandy covering this number. I mean, hell, they've covered every time they've been a dog this year, like you've said. So I could see Vandy getting within the number here. And, I mean, there's going to be more Tennessee. I mean, that whole stadium is going to be packed with Tennessee fans, but every game Vandy plays at home.
Yeah.
It's the same way. It was packed with Alabama fans, and they beat Alabama straight up. It was packed with Texas fans, and they lost by 3 to Texas. So they've played equal to or better teams than Tennessee and found ways to win or cover in that spot. They went on the road in Baton Rouge at night last week and covered against LSU. So wouldn't shock me at all. But I do think that the defensive front for Tennessee is going to cause a lot of problems for Diego Pavia and that offense for Vandy.
Yep. Last game we'll touch on, it has ACC implications again. Miami at Syracuse up in the Carrier Dome, 11-point favorites. Both these, Miami and Tennessee, both 11-point favorites going on the road last week of the season. Miami, I mean, that's a far way to travel all the way down from South Florida all the way up to snowy, cold New York. I know they're playing inside, but As a double-digit favorite this year, though, Miami 7-0 straight up and 6-1 against the spread. Cristobal has kind of righted the ship a little bit there because before the season, he was just 6-10 against the spread as a big favorite like that. But Syracuse this year, so far, they've been home underdogs twice. They're 2-0 straight up, obviously against the spread as well. They beat Virginia Tech and they beat Georgia Tech as home underdogs. It's going to be a shootout. Kyle McCord loves to sling it, and he won't stop slinging it, even if he throws 5 picks. Cam Ward is going to do the same thing. Miami's defense is Swiss cheese. This game could be a 45-38 type game.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean,
I got to look at the total on this one.
Yeah, at one point, Miami was, I don't know if it's still this way, I haven't looked at it, but at one point, Miami was the number 1, passing offense in the country, and Syracuse was number 2 in the country with Kyle McCord and that crew. So, yeah, I do think Syracuse is going to be able to score, but obviously Miami just doesn't really matter who Miami plays. They score.
67.5 for the total.
I could see this being 40-something to 30-something.
Yeah. I mean, even 38-31 gets you there.
It does.
Might be worth a look.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's worth a look on the over. But I think Syracuse can play.
We said that last week at the Kansas game. It was 59.5 and ended 37-21. So I'm glad we didn't pull the trigger on that.
No, I agree. And I don't know that we expected Kansas just to
We're just not good at totals.
No, we're not. Every time I put out a total this year, I can't get there. Yeah. So, but I think Syracuse can play with them in this game, man. I do think offensively they can have success. They're not going to stop Miami. They need to hope that they can get a turnover or two against Miami because there's no way they're going to stop them. But they absolutely can play with them and can score on their own on offense, no doubt.
Yeah. Well, talking about those two, big favorites there, big road favorites, leads us right into our next segment.
That upset alert alarm. Production, baby.
Upset alert time for possibly the last. Maybe we'll do it. Maybe we'll do it in the postseason. We'll see. But I'm going to start off, and I'm going to put the last two games we talked about in upset alert. Tennessee at Vandy, Miami at Syracuse. Vanderbilt is the one I'm more confident in. Them taking care of business. We've seen them do it multiple times this year.
Yeah.
And I just think, given what you said about Tennessee on the road and everything, this is going to be a tough game for them to win. And like you mentioned, the crowd, Pavia almost thrives better when he looks up in his own stands and he sees all that orange. I think he almost plays better. Miami, we've talked about this game for different reasons. We talked about this game since the summertime. And just kind of how a tricky spot this might be for Miami. We kind of threw on the fact, maybe they'll have the ACC locked up already, and it won't matter what the result of this game. They just got to win the ACC to get in the playoffs. Well, they got to win this game to get in the ACC championship game. And I know he's been better, like we just said, 7-0 straight up and 6-1 against the spread. But I mean, how trustworthy really is Mario Cristobal in a game like this, in a gotta have it game against a team that you're definitely favored to beat. So I'm going to put Tennessee and Miami on upset alert, and that would cause quite a bit of chaos.
Yes, it would. I'm putting Texas on upset alert for all the reasons that we talked about earlier. I just think with the huge opportunity here that A&M has in this bitter rivalry that they've got, Texas in College Station, Texas A&M's defensive front, Mike Elko. What an awesome coaching matchup, by the way, as far as Sark, the offensive savant versus the defensive savant, and Elko. But I do think that crowd and that atmosphere and the defensive front for A&M getting after Ewers, I do think that will cause problems for Texas. If they don't get pressure, then I do think that Texas can have a lot of success in the downfield passing game. But I do think that A&M is going to get pressure. I do think that Marcel Reed in the read option game and the run game is going to be able to make enough plays on offense against Texas. And I think A&M can get it done and win this game straight up. So, again, I've already put out A&M at plus 5.5 as a best bet. And I do think that they can win this game straight up.
I'm with you on that one. Yep. Best bets on our live show last night. I gave out a couple at the end of the show. I'm on Iowa minus 3.5 on Friday night on NBC. At home against Nebraska, it was 5.5. It's actually dropped down to 4.5 right now. So the line's still there. It's back down there. We'll probably see some more live movement. We always get those Thursday, Friday line movements. So I just think Nebraska has a little bit of a hangover from finally making a bowl for the first time since 2016. Going on the road, I don't care who's playing quarterback at Iowa anymore. I believe in Kirk Ferentz, and that defense is going to probably give the freshman quarterback some fits. So we'll see. I got Kansas. I got them earlier in the week. Took them straight up to win at Baylor when they were plus 105. They're now minus 115. So I'm on the Jayhawks to keep it rolling. They got to get a win to get to the bowl game too. Army -7 up in West Point, noon kickoff. Probably pretty chilly up there in West Point. UTSA going outside, playing a team that, like we said, they haven't had a lot of success. They've lost 3 out of the last 4 times they played Army. They lost by 8 last year as 7-point favorites. I just think Army rights the ship. I think Bryson Daly, finishes out the season on a high note there. And they've still got the Tulane game to look forward to. So took Indiana minus 27.5. They're currently 28.5, 29. I just think that Purdue is the worst team in the FBS. We said there was a very real possibility they could go 1-11, and this puts them there. I know they had a good showing against Michigan State last week, but IU is going to bounce back from suffering their first loss of the season. It's going to be chilly in Bloomington, 7 p.m. kickoff there. We talked about it a little bit earlier, Iowa State, Kansas. I'm going to take Iowa State -3. I just think home field advantage gets them there. I think Kansas State has been not great on the road, just kind of like a Tennessee. Like they've just been a different team on the road. They're 1-4 against the spread on the road. So not a good Kansas State team on the road. With you, A&M plus 7.5. And I'm probably going to do a little money line sprinkle there. A couple I'm thinking about, Minnesota against Wisconsin. I think I might like the Badgers in that one. They're currently 2-point favorites.
I'm with you.
They're 5-6. Minnesota 6-5. Minnesota just a heartbreaking loss last week, losing by 1 to Penn State. That was their big game.
What's that?
Kind of like Wisconsin. Kind of like Wisconsin the week before, right, against Oregon. They came back and they lose by 19 to Nebraska.
Yep.
Going on the road in a rivalry game, Wisconsin's got to have this for bowl eligibility. That'll be huge for Luke Fickell to get those 15 practices for his guys. So another one I like. I went against my alma mater last week, and they punked me. They said, "Don't you dare do it! Don't you dare bet against us!" And they had their best performance of the year against Western Kentucky, and now they're in a scenario where if they beat Sam Houston State this week, they're going to play Jacksonville State for the Conference USA Championship. I'm going to do it again, though. I kind of like Sam Houston State +3. The Bearcats are 8-3. They're getting points at home. Liberty is another one of those teams, 1-3 against the spread on the road. And I just think it's kind of a spot game here. And I think Liberty's Conference USA run ends here. And then another one I'm thinking about, which I'm probably going to pull the trigger on, is Vandy +11. So what you got?
All right. So I already gave out Texas A&M +5.5, and I may sprinkle a little bit on the money line as well. But Texas A&M +5.5 is an official best bet in that spot. I am also going to play Florida -14 at -120. They're currently at 14.5. Just again, when it sits at a key number in the hook, I'm fine with buying the hook. So I'm going to take Florida at -14, -120 to take a lot of frustration out in the rivalry game there against Florida State. And I think that DJ Lagway and that crew and Billy Napier and that crew keep the momentum rolling and keep it going in that spot. And I'm going to take Kentucky at home against Louisville, getting 4 on their home field from Louisville. Kentucky doesn't have any bowls to play for, nothing like that. They have owned this rivalry for a long time. Mm-hmm. And I think that Mark Stoops and Kentucky get it done and win against Louisville at home. That's another one that I'm considering sprinkling some money line action on. But at this point, I haven't gotten there yet. And that is all that I'm giving out at this moment. Some others that I am looking at. I'm looking at LSU -6 at home, final home game. Oklahoma coming off that huge win against Alabama. Now got to go on the road to Baton Rouge. I could see Garrett Nussmeier in his final home game there in Baton Rouge and that bunch lighting it up a little bit and scoring some points and taking care of business. And they're currently a 6-point favorite. I also am looking at Wisconsin with you at -2. I'm considering laying the wood with Oregon in their final home game against Washington and just 19 points. I'm considering laying that as well. And is Mac Brown? I know he's fired, but is he not coaching in this game?
He's coaching.
He is coaching.
He's coaching against NC State. One last ride with the Tar Heels.
Yeah, I'm not going to give it out at the moment, but I'm looking hard at North Carolina now. They love Mac. Those kids love Mac Brown, bro. And they have a chance to keep their rival NC State away from making a bowl. Like, I know NC State wants to make a bowl, but now this being Mac Brown's final game, I may take a hard look at that.
Yeah.
And then one other one that I'm looking at, I've got others probably, but one other one I'm looking hard at the moment is Mizzou at home. Final home game. They've got a bunch of guys that are like Luther Burden. He's not a senior, but he's going pro. A couple of those other receivers, they're done after this. Brady Cook, final home game for him as well. Some of the most successful players in the Missouri program over the last 20 years, this is their final home game. It's a rivalry game versus Arkansas. They've actually played pretty well the last few weeks as well. Went on the road to South Carolina, played well, beat the brakes off Mississippi State last week in Starkville. I could see Arkansas is already bowl eligible. I could see Mizzou getting a win there. And the last one, Kansas. I'm probably going to look at Kansas with you as well.
Okay. I'm going to get all sappy here. We are truly thankful for everybody who's listening and watching the show and who's stuck with us throughout the year and last year and through these last 15 months. It's been awesome. Mm-hmm. Hope everyone out there has a wonderful Thanksgiving. If you stuck with us and listened to this on your ride to grandma's house or whatever, we appreciate your wives and your children indulging us too. So just a couple dudes here talking ball. Thankful for college football. Thankful for family and friends and all that good stuff. So we appreciate you guys, and we will be back to recap the games next week. Enjoy it. Happy Thanksgiving.